needs parts, tools and emergency supplies. Call Julia on 880206 or find Carol's on Facebook.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mike, good afternoon. It's 7 minutes past 12 midday. Mannin Line on till 1. 57 new cases of COVID were recorded yesterday. We now have 611 active cases on the island. 8 people in Nobles, none in ICU. 333 people waiting for the result of a test, and 120 people minimum booked in for tests today. From the vaccination dashboard, 68,541 first doses have been administered, 65,092 second doses, 1,167 third doses, and 32,728 boosters have been administered, a grand total of 167,528. And the MHK is holding 16,334 shots of vaccine currently in stock. That's where we are at the moment. Special guest today on Mannin Line, Daphne Caine is with us. Faster Mai, good afternoon.
Faster Mai, Andy.
And, well, I don't think we've spoken since, but congratulations on being returned in Garth.
Thank you very much. Yes, that was a real honour to win the support of the constituents, and there's a lot of hard work ahead.
OK. First of all, I mean, and just before we get to climate change and what have you, what about the COVID situation? How do you read things at the moment?
I think, the numbers are slightly down in the Isle of Man, and that's pleasing to see. There's definitely more mask wearing out and about in the shops. I hope that with the schools now broken up for the holidays, that mask wearing continues in public places, the cinemas, the theatres, and on public transport, obviously. And I just hope that, as far as I'm concerned, doing a lateral flow before you go is a real positive as well, to act responsibly, really, in consideration of the rest of the community. And that's something I did this morning. So, it's always a relief to get a negative, but I kind of feel with Omicron on its way, and we know that's on the Isle of Man, the very high rates of transmissibility that has. I'd really urge those who can to go and have their booster and get vaccinated as the best protection you can have against what's coming, but also just to keep lateral flow and to keep wearing masks to protect the whole community. Were
you surprised by the way that people have got on board with this, and the fact that the day after this started to happen earlier, a couple of weeks ago now, suddenly masks appeared everywhere. 9 out of 10 people I counted on Strand Street the other day. 9 out of 10 people wearing masks.
I think people are making their own minds up. I think when you present the clear facts and people digest them, they make decisions in their own and their community's best interest. And I think the Isle of Man is very community minded. And I think that it's being very responsible. And that's reflected with this wave that was anticipated. Actually, it seems to be levelling off and reducing. It's just now the unknown with what the forecasters are telling us is going to be really highly transmissible new variant of Omicron, how that's going to impact the island.
When you got this new job, Chairman, what's the official title?
I'm the chair of the Climate Change Transformation Board. OK.
Did you ask for it or were you given it?
It was something that I discussed with the Chief Minister when I went along to his office to have an initial chat. On being returned to the House of Keys. I had accepted the post of Deputy Speaker, so I wasn't in line for a ministerial role, and this is not a ministerial role, but it is certainly something that I've been very vocal about, very active on, actually bringing the motion to declare the climate and environmental emergency for the island, and Tynwald eventually supported that after the Chief Minister had declared it. So I think where we are now, and that having led to the climate change bill that received royal assent and is now the law, I think that the Isle of Man has come a long way, and I'm pleased to get my teeth into such a meaty role, but I'm under no illusion. There is a huge amount of work ahead, and it's not just down to one person.
The Climate Change Act 2021 sets everything in stone, as it were. It's what the Isle of Man is committed to. Is it achievable?
Well, that's what we're looking at. And I should make it clear, while I'm the chair of the Transformation Board, we haven't actually convened the first meeting. So anything I'm saying is Daphne Caine, my opinion,
Right.
until we have the first meeting, hopefully in the first week of January.
Who's on the board?
We've also, just in the last couple of weeks, approved the terms of reference for the board and how it will operate. And it will be the Environment Minister, the Infrastructure Minister, myself and a Vice Chair who has yet to be confirmed.
Okay, so that's Claire Barber, Tim Crookall, and who was the other one?
That'll be me and the Vice Chair.
You and the
Will
Vice.
be another politician. The point being that the Chief Minister gave very clear direction. He wanted a more streamlined board because previously it was chaired by the Policy and Reform Minister.
Right.
It involved 5 ministers. And I suppose there was that consideration that there was some duplication of what the board determined and then going on. So very definitely major issues of policy will be referred or recommended, and it'll be the Council of Ministers who'll determine that.
And this is the crux. Many people, obviously don't want it to be a talking shop. They don't want politicians talking to each other about things they'd quite like to do.
There are some major milestones that we've got to meet on our journey to net zero by 2050. Under the Climate Change Act, we are committed to bringing forward an interim target. And sorry for people who are fed up with consultations, but we do have to consult on the interim target that is set. And Professor Curran, when he did his action plan, talked about a lower ambition pathway or a higher ambition pathway. Both mean significant investment and culture shift for the island in terms of how we live and how we generate our electricity. There are some major decisions that need taking sooner rather than later, and those will be, as I see it, the role of the Transformation Board is to get on with the delivery and do the research. There's a huge amount of research needed into some renewable technologies and other issues. Decarbonisation of home heating is another large area, and a transport strategy. But those big policy decisions should rightly sit with the Council of Ministers, and where I see the Transformation Board making a real difference is in getting on with it, actioning, rolling out what we can do, and involving business and bringing the whole community along with us.
Okay, David dropped a note in and just said, the question I'd like to put to Daphne is, if the climate change bill is to be meaningful and not waffle and empty promises, are there any practical proposals in black and white that will make the transition from gas and oil-powered energy production and transport an achievable goal, bearing in mind we actually don't have the infrastructure in place for electric vehicles and little chance of reducing our carbon footprint other than using our own gas resources?
Well, there's a lot in there to unpick. First of all, decarbonisation of domestic property. Well, there is a year, actually, I think, in the Climate Change Act, and that says by 2025 we won't be putting gas boilers in new builds. There are some people in the recent consultation who wanted to see that date brought forward. And I think if I were buying a brand new build, I would be seriously questioning why a gas boiler was going in as standard. I don't think I would want a gas boiler in my new build, knowing that that would have to be retrofitted probably in 10 years.
The government could mandate that. The government could put they could put a mandate out to the builders and just say, no more gas boilers, no ifs, no buts, no maybes, no gas boilers.
In new builds. They could, but we have to bring the construction industry along with us, and it has to be done at a pace that is achievable and affordable. And if you said that, would you say then that the government should pay for new boilers for the difference between a gas or an alternative form of heating, air source heat pump, whatever? The other thing that's very much wrapped up in this is that the SAT rating of a building, the air tightness of property, if we can get that up near 97%, I think it's in 88% now, if we can push that through building regulations to 97%, there's some question whether you'd need a form of heating on the traditional level or an air source heat pump. But when it comes down to the property, insulation is very, very important. And that's what we have with a number of our older properties. And we've got a lot of older properties that are going to need retrofitting. But that's just one thing. I mean, my inbox has been full. I can't tell you how inundated I've been with a lot of anxious people in some ways, some wanting to crack on and do everything absolutely to the highest level. And I've been in discussion with Construction Isle of Man. I know that they very firmly recognise the issues that are facing us. We know domestic heating is a big issue, but it's just been announced in the UK. They've just brought in new building regulations that will come in, I think, in June next year. Whereas just in terms of changing the culture, changing that mindset to people going on to air source heat pumps. And I've spoken to people who have one, and there was, initially it was, they're too noisy, they don't warm your house, and that's not the message I'm getting from people who actually have them.
Will government take a lead then on government properties, public sector housing? Do you think government should put the first flag there and just say, we'll put our own house in order first. All public buildings are not going to have gas boilers. No schools are going to have gas boilers, and all public sector housing is going to be brought up to an insulation standard that everybody should aspire to.
That would be a very good policy, wouldn't it, to recommend? So we'll have to see when we've got the board what is achievable. We know that at Janet's Corner, the very first 2 were achieved 10 years ago, and I think there were 8 at the recent development in Ballasalla that were local government. But a large number of properties that are now being built are private developers. And I think that there is a mindset change that I would like to see possibly happen ahead of when it can be legally mandated, and perhaps there might be the demand, I think there certainly was in the recent consultation, for that date to be brought forward. But we also have to have the availability. That takes a lot of electricity to power as we move more to electric vehicles. And your caller who said, was it David, who said there isn't the infrastructure yet. No, yes. But it is significantly improving and increasing. And I was really pleased that I went to Tynwald Mills to do a bit of Christmas shopping at the weekend, and they had just promoted the fact that there were 4 new electric vehicle charger points in the car park, whereas previously, if I went there with my little electric car, I had to park at the Arboretum car park and walk all the way through. So more and more are being rolled out all the time, and I think that there was a very large jump in electrical vehicle ownership in the last few months and in the last year.
Okay. Well, I think if you, with Manx Utilities, there's a special app that you can get. If you download the PodPoint app, it shows the chargers on the public network and if they're available and status and what have you. But, I mean, on that, there are 63 sockets just 63 sockets on the network. And I don't know, do you know how many charging points there are on the prom?
I don't know. There's some new ones. I haven't clocked those yet. I haven't used those. I tend to use, because I have an electric vehicle, but I actually do not charge it at home. I don't have off-road parking at home. I've had the vehicle for over a year now, and I manage on the public charger. So when we finish here, I will go and charge behind Tynwald offices, and for my 2 hours disc parking, that will top me up enough, if not quite to 100%.
How much does it cost to charge?
A 2-hour charge, roughly about £1.50, something like that. It's a lot less than conventional fuel.
Do you like your electric vehicle?
Love it.
Yeah? Has it ever run out?
I've got close a couple of times. I'm very fortunate, actually, that Laxey by the fire station, there's a couple of chargers, and they are not on a disc. So, and that's within a couple of miles of where I live. So I have once or twice gone down and left it in Laxey for 6 hours at a time. And I do find that they're probably one of the least used charging points that I go to. Quite often, the one that they put in recently behind government offices is constantly in use.
OK, here's a message this is from Tim in Port St Mary. Could you please give your best estimate of the total budget, crikey, the Isle of Man will need to spend to become carbon neutral in accordance with the climate change bill? How much is it going to cost?
I wouldn't like to speculate what that's going to cost to 2050. We are already working on various scenarios towards getting a plan for 2030, which would be the interim, and depending what we do, there would be different investment needed. But this would be split between businesses, between government and individuals. So it is running to the hundreds of millions. I mean, I would say anything from 400 million to 1 billion you'd be looking at, depending on the things you needed to do. But just look, fantastic news last week. Zurich, with the headquarters up at the business park, announced that they are investing a load of money in solar panels to power 70% of that building's cost. And we've already had, with the Mountain View Innovation Centre, similar rollout of huge amounts of roofs covered in solar panels powering their businesses. So I think businesses are doing it for themselves. The other message I get constantly is that we need, as an island, to be greener. We need to have, there's many businesses looking to their ESG, their environmental sustainable governance, their own eco-credentials. Businesses are wanting power points, charging points for vehicles. I know there's a large company up on Onken Head that's putting in charging points for staff vehicles, and I don't think they'll be charging staff for charging their vehicles there, unlike the public power points. So we have to change in terms of what we're doing, and instead of being frightened by the figures, I mean, the cost of doing nothing is a significant cost as well, because the gas power station, and there's so much discussion about gas at the moment, but the gas power station is ready for decommissioning by 2031. So if we were to recommission gas instead of moving more to an interconnector and renewables on island, we are talking substantial multi-millions to recommission that. And why would you want to do that with the volatility in gas and in terms of the security of our future supply? So there are many considerations, and for me it's a balancing act between enabling those who are the least able to be able to fund the change themselves, to enable everybody to come along at the same time, while businesses, just because of their own social responsibility, are making their own choices and their own investments. And you asked me about government buildings as well. I very much hope that, in terms of, there was uproar in Laxey when Laxey School was re-roofed just like this year, and no attempt to put any solar panels on it. I would hope that government, and with Manx Utilities, will be very seriously looking at the government estate and what renewable energy can be sourced from that.
Okay, Howard, you're live with Daphne Caine.
Good afternoon. Just a question. I heard you just now. I've just been driving down. You're saying about housing. Houses in the future are hoped to be sealed up to at least 97%. This is to stop heat escape and various other aspects. But in doing so, a house requires ventilation, because it's a classic example in a lot of the Douglas Corporation houses, and possibly, I don't know, in government houses, of condensation, which is creating problems within the houses themselves of black fungus, etc. How is it going to be solved in so much that while the houses are sealed and you've got a family, say, of 5 in there, all breathing, all cooking, and various other aspects, there's going to be condensation within that building? How do they propose to get rid of the condensation without opening windows, which defeats the object of what you're proposing of heat pumps, which work 24 hours a day?
Okay, thanks, Howard. I would say I'm not a technical expert, so in my non-specialist understanding of what happens is that the buildings are highly insulated and airtight, as you said. They don't require, when you're saying the 100% heating on all the time, if it's up to 97%, you probably wouldn't need an air source heat pump, but you would have some sort of heat recovery system. So where you've got there's sort of pumps that suck out the warm air, so from your kitchen and your cooking and your bathrooms and your steam, and they send that through pipes and through a filter, and what comes out is filtered clean air, warm air in the other areas of the house. So it's a heat recovery system, and probably if the houses of the future, you'd also have your solar panels, you'd have your Tesla Powerwall, you'd have your heating and your power coming in and being stored and being pushed out where it was needed. But the eco houses that are currently under construction, and parts of Europe are much further advanced on this than we are. There's a balancing, and it's an air heat recovery system that takes the heat away from where it's needed and balances that around the property. But I'm not a technician.
The condensation is the problem within these buildings. The heat is already there, and no matter what form, electric, gas, oil or whatever, the heat is already there. But the condensation, if you seal those houses up, there's nowhere for the condensation to disperse. And as a family that's cooking, bathing, showering, just general everyday life, if these houses are sealed, you're building in problems for the future. Plus, now we've got a classic example of, I hope it doesn't go on forever, but they're saying open your windows and let the the virus out. So that's fine. But at the moment, the heating bills are going through the roof, so you're going to have to open your windows. But you've got to have sufficient ventilation and air movement within that house to clear any condensation. Otherwise, 20 or 30 years down the line, all the ceilings and walls are going to be black.
Yeah, but it is a heat recovery system, so that is air movement, that is constant air movement that is circulating around the building, that is highly insulated. So, of course, it has to be a system that prevents what you're describing. And my understanding is that the newest technology that are being used in other jurisdictions can achieve that.
Okay, all right, thanks, Howard.
Andy, can someone from Ms. Caine's department sometime come on and explain the potential risks and the non-risks of that thing? Because if you're buying a £300,000 house, you don't want 30 years down the line to have major repairs.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Howard. We appreciate that call as well. And again, I think these are practical problems that people come up in people's mind about the fact that, and what you're describing is almost an air conditioning unit that takes the heat out of it. And because we don't have lots of them, because people don't see them routinely, apart from obviously the sort of privileged few who can get them or want to get them, and I think that's was behind my point about the government mandating stuff, because if the government's going to have to lead on this, aren't they?
I think there's been an awakening amongst government that the public is waiting for government to lead, and the criticisms that have become that have come from the public is that government hasn't been leading.
In many ways, you're pushing an open door.
Yes, I think we are, but it has to be balanced against the cost. We can't have this at any cost. It has to be practical solutions. But the technology is out there. The construction companies are gearing up for this. They are aware of the technologies, but we can only do it at the speed that they're available. And there's been, you're saying it's the specialists and the privileged few who've been able to afford it to date, and I'd agree with that. And this has to become the mainstream. So it has to be the standard across new builds of the future, but it also then we have to tackle the retrofitting problem, and I think that's going to be a harder nut to crack than it is to start mandating for new builds. Okay,
Bonzo, you're live with Daphne Caine.
Hello, Ms. Caine.
Hi there, Bonzo.
Yes, want to talk about wind power. Firstly, what progress is Isle of Man government making on the offshore wind farm that we hear quite a lot about? And also, what future do you see in the short and medium term for onshore wind power on the island?
Right, well, you might be aware that I met with Greg Hans while I was at the COP26. We discussed many things to do with the Isle of Man, and I also met with Ørsted, who have the licence for the section of the Isle of Man Sea that we might be looking to put a wind farm within our territorial seas. The progress has been restricted because the Isle of Man is currently not able to access the UK wind market under UK legislation through this Contracts for Difference that has come up numerous times, which I'm sure, Bonzo, you'll understand better than I will. So we'd be unable to export to the UK without that. There are some negotiations going on in terms of whether that would be possible, because if we're talking a 700 megawatt wind farm offshore, then that would be far too much energy to come into the Isle of Man.
Yes, of course. But, however, with the capacity to export that, and that's the economics, obviously, for Ørsted, which could then give us the potential to charge seabed leasing of the orders of magnitude that you have for the areas that are just next door to where Orsted plan to put the wind farm. Those are owned by the Crown Estates. And I think they were auctioned off for £200 million a year for the exploration and survey phase, the first 10 years, each. So Crown Estates making over 10 years, £4 billion from these two wind farms, which are the ones that have been recently mentioned by Isle of Man Steam Packet about perhaps causing problems with ferry routes.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I hope that consultation process enables those issues to be overcome. I think in terms of our one, in terms of the site, we are in negotiation. Progress is slow because there are some legal issues to overcome, but also the suitability in terms of where that power would go. In terms of the Isle of Man achieving renewable energy on island, that's quite likely to be through an interconnector. We already have one. The recent future energy scenarios document that Arup prepared for us and which featured in the consultation over the summer had 5 energy scenarios. And we could say that the biggest decision we're going to have to take sooner rather than later will be how big a second interconnect will we have and where will it go? And that will presumably come before the board sooner rather than later. And the other, in terms of on-island renewables, I am delighted with the amount of companies who have been getting in contact and wanting to discuss propositions for onshore Isle of Man renewable energy generation.
Yes, I mean, certainly I've heard of proposals for something like 100 megawatts of onshore wind, which means that Mag's utilities could essentially go pretty much carbon, well, if not carbon neutral, then very much near to sort of net zero by having that amount of wind power, and then the gas station actually keeping the base load, and then being able there to service any peaks and troughs.
Okay, all right. Bonzo, I'm sorry, we've got to leave it there because people are queuing up to speak to Daphne, but we appreciate your call.
On the 10th day of Christmas, my true love bought for us 10 bricks for laying, 9 showers pumping, 8 cement mixers, 7 bathroom mirrors, 6 slabs for laying, 5 bright chrome handles, 4 panel doors, 3 augers, 2 tap hole basins, and a Haldane Fisher bathroom.
You'll find everything you need to improve your home at Haldane Fisher. Call the helpful team today. See online or visit your nearest branch in Douglas or Ramsey.
Ho, ho, ho! Here at Ramsey Garden Centre, we have Christmas covered. Walk through our Made with Love magical Christmas wonderland. See our fabulous new decorations, lights indoors and outside for all occasions, baubles and beads, trees real or artificial, gift ideas and a few surprises at Ramsey Garden Centre. It wouldn't be Christmas without a visit to Ramsey Garden Centre on Albert Road. Visit us on Facebook to see what's in store this festive season.
Me and the missus have been using Spectrum windows for as long as I can remember. From the windows in our very first house to our new orangery, we've received the latest tried and tested products and a great service. Locally based, Spectrum work island-wide and employ their own installers, so the excellent workmanship's guaranteed. Come to think of it, we've been married as long as we've been using Spectrum windows. That's 25 glorious years.
Visit Spectrum Windows, the showroom, Derby Road, Ramsey, or call 817777.
Employers, having trouble with staff and need reliable advice? Employees, are you treated fairly in the workplace or do you have a grievance?
The workplace can be problematic on both sides. For any work-related legal issue, contact the employment law experts, Man Benham. They advise employers and staff on all work-related problems with sound professional advice and a transparent fee policy. To arrange your free consultation at Man Benham, call today on 639 350.
Man Benham, here for you.
This Tuesday at 6 here on Manx Radio, join Kiri Kumod and myself, Simon Clark, for Countryside.
We hear from travelling vet Emma Sale to talk about the safe use of medicines, and I also catch up with Peter Quayle ahead of the Christmas poultry sale on Thursday.
I went along to speak to Rob Tier to find out how the butchers are coping with the demands from the Isle of Man with poultry and sausages and meat.
That's all in Countryside Tuesday here on Manx Radio at 6 o'clock. And don't forget, you can download and subscribe to the podcast for free at manxradio.com.
The Man in Line with Andy Wint.
It's 23 minutes before one. Just briefly, Daphne, you wanted to just address a couple of points there?
Come back on Bonzo's points, and I really welcome the enthusiasm for, up to 100 megawatt renewables. Isn't likely to be achievable in the short term for the Isle of Man, simply because that couldn't be balanced on the Isle of Man's grid and the way the network is set up at the moment. And also, I don't think you would keep a gas power station just to preserve the base load if there were other methods, cleaner, greener methods to achieve the on-island generation.
Okay, and just get that straight. You said that the Pulrose Power Station could be decommissioned in 2031.
That's when it's scheduled for, so we could be looking between 2031 and 2035.
10
not
years.
Having a gas power station without a significant investment in that. So when we are looking at alternative means of providing the Isle of Man electricity, that's why the interconnector becomes so significant.
This is the one that goes from just down below Manx Radio to Bispam.
Yes, near Blackpool. And also, we're not talking that one, we're talking an additional one.
Okay. John, you're live with Daphne Caine.
Oh, good morning. More am I. Obviously, listening with interest. I consider this whole thing to be a left-wing vanity project, which is unachievable either technically or financially. There's no evidence whatsoever from Ronald's Way, Armagh Observatory, or the British Met Office that the Isle of Man is experiencing anything more than a quite gentle and indeed beneficial climate change. But they're talking about windmills. You realise that they have a cube law. So if they're producing maximum power at 30 miles an hour, they're producing 1/8 of their output at 15 miles an hour. They use 9 times the resources of a combined cycle gas turbine, which has got to be mined, of course, using diesel-powered machinery. They occupy, for the same area, which is about 4 acres for the CCGT, a wind farm, or subsidy farm, probably better called, requires 2,500 acres. And then there's the enormous environmental difference, especially when they're on land. About 13 million trees were knocked down or sawn down in Scotland to make way for their wind farms. And it hasn't done them a great deal of good because the unreliability of the interconnector between Scotland and England. So relying on interconnectors is and of course we all know about the one to France which burnt out. So interconnectors are not to be relied upon. And actually, why would we want to be dependent on English power when they're heading in the same direction? The British are suffering an energy crisis as it is because windmills aren't delivering.
Okay, Daphne Caine?
Well, there's a few points there, and I sense that some climate sceptics such as John are not going to be swayed by anything I may say, but if I can pick up on a few points that he started with, that the Isle of Man is just having a little beneficial climate change, a bit of warming. At COP26, there were significant numbers of people, particularly the indigenous women and the young people, speaking directly a lot from the Southern Hemisphere, but directly about how climate change has impacted their lives, their livelihoods, their homes have been devastated. And I mean, only last week, the Philippines was hit by a typhoon, 140 people killed, 400,000 displaced. And the extreme weather events are getting more and more frequent. So what we do in the north, even though it has a lower impact potentially than others. It still has an impact on the world, and we are all one planet. So anything we do has to be responsible in world terms, in planet terms. And in terms of wind power, actually, my information is that generating wind energy and renewable energy, actually, the cost of that has come down compared with gas and oil and traditional methods. So if it's so wrong, why are the whole world turning over to it as fast as they can? The biggest issue that we all face, which I agree, is the base load, maintaining the base load. And our interconnector, unlike the one from France to Jersey, I would say has been excellently well
and it's the longest AC interconnector in the world.
And from Manx Utilities, the word is you put your effort into securing the best quality, and the procurement process for that needs to be and was. Given the record that we have with ours, that's where you put all your effort and your energies in. And in terms of the energy that we are receiving through that, our emissions have lowered this year because we are having the whole mix of the UK generation coming down the interconnector to serve the Isle of Man. And yes, we need to increase in some cases the number of on-island generation that we have to provide the security. And that energy security is more of an issue actually in our recent public consultation. That's more of a political issue. Most of the public are not so bothered. They don't mind paying a little bit more for renewable energy, but they are less bothered about it coming through an interconnector.
I'll be with you in a moment again, John, but just before we go any further, Daphne Caine, this subject divides opinion. So as a politician, you must get some personal flack. How do you feel? I mean, if people call you a left-wing activist, how do you feel?
Yeah, I've had that, and I've had to say, well, I think it was left-wing activism where this started, and the Extinction Rebellions, and now I think it's mainstream. We have the Green Party, we have Labour, we have Conservatives all talking about climate action and social responsibility in terms of government, as you said, leading where we need people to. And in fact, why wouldn't you want a more airtight home with lower energy bills, given the volatility in gas or oil prices and supply, security of supply? Why wouldn't you want to provide the homes for the future where people don't face that uncertainty?
Okay, final word, John?
Yeah, well, £400 million, £1,000 million. Perhaps Mrs. Caine is unaware that on the island we have food banks, we have energy policy, we have poor roads, we have a crippled hospitality sector, we've got the Liverpool dock cost, we've got the public sector pension deficit, just to mention a few. And spending all this money, which is actually completely unnecessary, because we can quite happily run on our gas-fired generator for as long as we like, and if we want to replace it, then the new ones are 20% more economical. It seems like it is a vanity project, and the money could be far better spent elsewhere and far more far better.
Okay, all right, John, thanks for being with us today. We're live with Daphne Caine on Mannin Line.
Got a room that could do with a little lift for Christmas? Kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, living room. Home in on ShopRite Douglas now. An exciting choice of stylish touches that don't cost a fortune. New inspirations, quality essentials, and more arriving all the time, including our exclusive Sainsbury's homeware. A fantastic range available only at ShopRite Douglas. But hurry, when they're gone, they're gone.
With the global rise in gas prices, some people may be worried about paying their gas bill this winter. If you are concerned about your own bill or someone in your family, please contact our friendly team at Manx Gas on 644 We offer a priority care scheme and energy-saving advice, so do get in touch with us to see how we can help you. Give Manx Gas a call on 644 and we will do all we can to help.
It's time to enjoy the Christmas season. Help support local businesses and protect yourself and others by following the latest advice from Isle of Man Government. Take a lateral flow test before going to parties and celebrations. Wear a face covering in indoor public spaces. Stay at home if you are unwell or have COVID-19 symptoms. Stay safe this Christmas. Visit covid19.gov.im for the latest help and advice.
Right, class, it's time to learn the ABCs of car buying. Pay attention at the back. A is for Athol Garage, where the A-team will look after you. B is for Ballasalla, the home of Athol Garage, where you'll always find a hand-picked choice of quality used cars. And if they don't have it, they'll find it for you. C is for confidence, which is what you can buy with. Visit athol.co.im or call 820082. Athol Garage, where buying a great car's as easy as ABC.
We have an explosive mix on tonight's hour-long agenda special. Should we extract our gas and profit from it? Oh, yes, we should, says Dickon Sargent, CEO of Kroger. But oh, no, we shouldn't, says gas extraction expert John Curtis. In light of the latest climate change evidence, is it right for us to do so? Oh, no, it isn't, says leader of the Green Party Andrew Newton. Oh, yes, it is, says former MHK and Kroger investor Chris Robert Shaw. Tune in to Agenda on Manx Radio at 6 p.m. with me, Phil Gorn, as we have a gas, talking about gas extraction.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
13 minutes to 1 with Daphne, Caine, Chair of the Climate Change Transformation Board. When's the first meeting?
I'm hoping it's going to be the first week of January.
Okay, so it's Claire Barber, Environment, Tim Crookall, Infrastructure. Who else did you have? A Vice Chair?
A Vice Chair yet to be appointed by the Chief Minister.
Okay, and you.
Mm-hmm.
And you. Okay. Daphne, Caine, just tell me something. If we did nothing, now John was advocating that we're fine, we don't need to, but there aren't any serious climate problems on the Isle of Man. We don't get tidal waves, we don't get tsunamis.
We get flooding in Laxey and Castletown and Ramsey.
Yeah, but I mean, with that background, how much, surely we'd save money by doing nothing, wouldn't we?
We wouldn't save money. The government has always invested in our infrastructure. For instance, I think it was £400 million when we built the gas-fired power station all those years ago. If to do nothing would mean recommissioning what we already have, there would be a significant cost to refurbish our gas and our diesel generators, gas turbines, to keep the energy, keep the lights on. So, of course, in my mind, it would be better to put that focus, effort and investment into a combination of ways, including renewable on-island generation, that would serve the needs of the future.
OK, Patrick, you're live with Daphne Caine.
Hello, Daphne.
Hi there.
Daphne, I'm just in curiosity. When will you stop letting diesel cars be imported to the Isle of Man? Especially cars that are no longer necessary, like something that's 5 years old, goes through the MOT, passes, and then you're walking along the road and they stink of diesel.
I don't have the ability to ban anything myself. I think in terms of going before the Transformation Board, it's a consideration. I certainly think, I've had people very resistant to stopping diesel and petrol cars, but it's going to happen. We know that the UK are legislating to prevent the licensing of new petrol and diesel cars in the future. I would say that it's likely that we would be aligned to that. In terms of the older, more polluting vehicles, I think, again, as a community, that's a decision that we need to look at, debate, discuss and come up with a policy. One of the other ones that I've had both sides of the argument is, why don't we ban coal? Why are we still bringing coal over for domestic burning when there are smokeless fuels available? So I would just say that the first agenda of the Climate Change Transformation Board is a very long one. We will look at the various issues that are coming up, and in terms of dirty diesel cars, the older, more polluting ones, I'd be happy to put that on the agenda for consideration.
Okay.
I hope you do, Daphne, because to me, the Isle of Man shouldn't wait for England. We're supposed to have our own government. We should be able to have the teeth and the gall to say we're going to do this and get it done.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Patrick. We appreciate that. I haven't got too many texts and emails, so I'm going to go to another one now. And it just says, "Dear Mrs. Caine, formal from Paul. I live in Cornay. Voted for you at the last election, and I've been following the debate about natural gas in Manx waters. I understand you're arguing against the exploitation of these resources. My view is Isle of Man electricity supply is chiefly run on imported gas to run Paul Rose. The importance also is, just to paraphrase this, otherwise we'll go on forever, It's starting to become obvious we'll be dependent on natural gas for an appreciable time to come. Southern Islands realise their dependence on imported gas needs to be reduced. That's why Ireland are investing in their offshore gas field as well. I strongly believe that for financial and security reasons, we should be embracing the opportunity to exploit our gas resources. From Paul.
Thank you for that, Paul. I would say in terms of the COP26 messaging, that was the point that I was asked on. These fossil fuels should stay in the ground. But, I'm really looking forward to hearing your agenda programme this evening, because I think maybe that will thrash out the more detailed points of this. It's not my decision whether or not the licence is extended for Kroger. And in terms of should we do it, of course, if you're saying it would secure our supply and it would be billions of pounds for the Manx Treasury, then they are considerations that are going to have to be made. But the environmental and the social, the ESG considerations of many companies will be looking at that in detail. For instance, Shell pulled out of going ahead with a gas field, I think, off the Shetland Islands for reasons of the environment, not for the cost effectiveness, the viability of the field there. And I think there's so many unknowns currently about that I don't know enough. In terms of the viability, how easy it is to access, whether I think the Kroger has talked about a closed loop system that would prevent any emissions coming out at the time of drilling or releasing the gas. I think that there are too many unknowns at the minute to make a firm comment on, but it won't be my decision. I'm sure it will be much higher up the food chain for people to balance all those facts, information, and climate concerns.
Well, I think it's become obvious because we're absolutely stacked out on the phone lines and the emails and the texts, is that the public, it seems, want lots and lots and lots and lots of facts, and they want to know what's going on. So first of all, it's an open invitation to come back anytime you want and bring members of the committee if you want to talk about the Climate Transformation Board and how things are moving. And do you think, and again, this is Daphne Caine personally because the board doesn't exist, do you think it's time to be bold as far as the Isle of Man is concerned?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there was an element of people who are fearful about what it's going to cost them individually. And I think that what we have to be very clear on is action is needed because our actions will have a lasting impact on the rest of the world and also on our own investability as an island and how others see us. And in terms of a gas field, my worry is if we do decommission a gas power station, by the time any gas is up and running coming out of our waters, would it really be a transition fuel? And I worry that it wouldn't be a transition fuel. And as has been said by others, that you could end up with a stranded asset that the government would then be paying to decommission rather than it being, the saviour of all with the billions going in and the gas continuity of supply. So I think there's far too many unknowns. But from a climate perspective, it is a very clear direction of travel where the world is going.
Okay, just a final question from Lorraine, who just said, bearing in mind what John was saying earlier on, is the Isle of Man government doing this to be seen to be doing the right thing internationally, or is your heart really in it?
Well, my heart's really in it. I think that the international reputation should be a concern. There's no way that we wouldn't comply with any financial directives or of international standing in terms of preserving the reputation of our finance industry. And all I can say is very definitely the Isle of Man has lost investment opportunities from companies because we are not as advanced as others in terms of being able to deliver renewable energy, green energy to companies and identify the proportion that they would receive of that. Recently, yes. Categorically. So it is a concern. It's not just my concern. It is a concern of many responsible businesses that this is the way that we need to go. But I absolutely accept that we need to bring everyone along with us and we need some bold decisions. And probably there are some quick wins that we could do that that might not be, the groundbreaking, do we extract gas from our waters or not, but, just things that can make a small difference to our environment, to our emissions, just the pollution levels around town and the amount of heating people are using. I think that there are some sort of quick wins we need to look at, perhaps smaller level decisions, but then there are some wider policy decisions that we need a serious amount of research as well, and that's what's held it back. We need a feasibility study over biofuels. We need to look at the big picture and what is best for the island in every aspect.
Okay, thanks for being with us. Merry Christmas, by the way.
Merry Christmas
Happy
to
New
you too.
Year. That's Daphne Caine, and hopefully she'll come back in the new year to talk more about this. Listen tonight, Agenda, hour-long special with Phil Gorn about the gas. And Mannin Line returns tomorrow. Chief Minister's in on Wednesday.
WINT. We all